Week 4 is a great week to do some wheeling and dealing in your fantasy football leagues because plenty of fantasy managers out there are looking at their team and realizing they didn't draft the perfect team and they're ready to make some moves. Let's talk about 15 players I think you should be trying to trade for right now while you can, who can help you rest the season. Before I get to those guys, if you haven't checked out UnderdogFantasy.com yet, you need to check it out right now because they're running a new customer special, Jared Goff higher than half a yard for Thursday Night Football. All you got to do is go to UnderdogFantasy.com, sign up using promo code ENDGAME. Not only will they match your deposit dollar for dollar up to $100, but they're going to give you this new customer line. Pair this Jared Goff line with any other line you like, and you can triple your entry. Again, UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code ENDGAME. Get that deposit match dollar for dollar up to $100 and take advantage of this Jared Goff higher than half a yard line. The first player I'm going to recommend you trade for is Josh Jacobs. I recommended him last week. I did say, hey, look, he's got another tough matchup against the Steelers, but after that, it gets better. Well, this is a time when it's going to get better, and his value did not go up in week 3, did not have a monster game, but you still got to be encouraged by his usage. He currently ranks 10th in attempts in the entire NFL. He ranks 6th in attempts inside the 5-yard line, and he has 14 targets and 10 catches through 3 games. He's getting elite level usage. It's going to pay off, and it could start this week against a weak Chargers defense. And I would happily trade a wide receiver like Deebo Samuel coming off 2 nice games. But remember, Brandon Ayuk did not play last game. Deebo Samuel is still going to be volatile. Brandon Ayuk, mostly the guy here. I'd be happy moving a wide receiver like Deebo to get a running back like Jacobs. I'd also be happy moving a wide receiver like George Pickens and a running back like Raheem Mostert to get Josh Jacobs. Raheem Mostert has a ton of value right now, but do we really expect Raheem Mostert to do this all season long? And George Pickens, I like the guy, but we saw last night this offense is going to handicap him, and eventually Deontay Johnson will be back. So I feel like this is a good time to sell high on them to get a guy like Jacobs. And then if you wanted to do running back for running back swap, I would be happy to move Derrick Henry for Josh Jacobs. Derrick Henry has been outsnapped by Tyjae Spears 2 weeks in a row. Doesn't look like we're going to see vintage Derrick Henry. I will gamble on Josh Jacobs over Derrick Henry. Now, a stud wide receiver who's been overshadowed not only by another wide receiver, but even the running backs on his own team is Jalen Waddle, but this guy is still a stud. He has 8 catches for 164 yards, and he's played less than 2 games so far, but he's coming back from a concussion, so it's not something that you have to worry about affecting his performance. We know he's a stud in a fantastic offense. If you can buy Jalen Waddle low right now, you got to do it. And again, I'd be okay moving a running back like Derrick Henry for Jalen Waddle. A lot of people still think Derrick Henry is going to be an elite top 5 fantasy option. Take advantage of it. Get a wide receiver like Waddle. I'd also be willing to trade a running back like Kenneth Walker, who has 4 touchdowns in the last 2 games. If people think this guy is going to continue to score 2 touchdowns every week, I think Kenneth Walker is a great sell high if you can get a stud wide receiver like Waddle. And then again, if you wanted to do wide receiver for wide receiver, I'd be okay moving Deebo Samuel for Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle will be better rest of the season. Now, another running back who's getting the volume but not the results so far is Ramondre Stevenson. He ranks 9th in attempts in the entire NFL and has 13 targets and 10 receptions through 3 games. The usage is there, the results just aren't. But he's had a pretty tough start to the season as far as schedule goes. I still think Ramondre Stevenson will be great rest of the season. I would happily be buying low on Ramondre Stevenson. And again, I'm going to recommend Deebo as a sell high. If you need a running back and you're deep at wide receiver, I would happily move Deebo for Ramondre Stevenson. And if I could move DJ Moore and a running back like Javonte Williams for Ramondre Stevenson, I would right now. DJ Moore did save his day with a touchdown. He's had 2 nice games in a row. People may still believe on him, and they may believe in the long-term potential of Javonte. Just give me Ramondre Stevenson over these guys. And I'd also trade a wide receiver like DK Metcalf. Look, DK Metcalf's been fine to start the season. He'll have some moments, but again, if you need running back and you're okay at wide receiver, I think I would move DK Metcalf for Ramondre Stevenson pretty easily. Now, last week I mentioned Cooper Kupp on here. This is potentially your last week to go out and trade for Cooper Kupp because after week 4, he's probably going to be back and people aren't going to want to move Cooper Kupp. So you got to do it now or never. And people worried about Puka Nacua taking his role don't understand how Puka Nacua is being used. Puka Nacua playing 70% of his snaps on the outside. Cooper Kupp last year, almost 50% in the slot. Puka will not affect his role. If anything, Kupp is going to affect Puka. And again, if I could trade a running back like Derrick Henry, who looks like he may not be vintage Henry, for an elite wide receiver like Cooper Kupp, I'm doing it. And then I'd also be willing to trade Kenneth Walker and maybe package him with a guy like DeAndre Hopkins to get a massive wide receiver upgrade, a potential top 5 fantasy player rest of the season. And then again, if I could trade a wide receiver like DK Metcalf, maybe the team that has Cooper Kupp really needs a wide receiver right now, and package him with a tight end like George Kittle, who just came off a nice game, but I don't think is going to be that good most weeks. If the player in your league who has Kupp really needs a win and needs a tight end, this might get it done. And then another player who's not playing right now that I recommended you trade for last week, and this is probably going to be your last chance, is Jonathan Taylor. We've already heard reports that Jonathan Taylor is going to be ready to play week 5. The Colts have 1 week left to trade Jonathan Taylor. Don't think it's going to happen. We're probably going to see this guy in a Colts uniform in week 5. If you need a running back, which most people do, go try to get Jonathan Taylor. And you might be able to get him for a wide receiver like Mike Evans, who has been nothing but great so far this season. If the player who has Jonathan Taylor is pretty good at running back and needs wide receiver help, Mike Evans might do it. Or you could package a wide receiver like George Pickens, who I already talked about, and a running back like Raheem Mostert, who I already talked about. Raheem Mostert at least can give that guy points right now. He might need a win, and you get an upgrade long-term at running back with JT. And then once again, I'm going to say if the player in your league who has Jonathan Taylor really needs to win this week, you might be able to get him for Derrick Henry right now because Derrick Henry is at least playing. All right, and then a wide receiver who missed week 3 but should be back this week is Brandon Ayuk. It's easy to forget he had that monster week 1, and then in week 2 was a little bit disappointing, but he was really this close to another huge game. And in the 2 games he's played, he has a 27% target share and a 40% air yardage share. I really think he's going to be better than Deebo Samuel this year, and he's going to be the team's #1 wide receiver. But you could potentially get him for a running back like Jahmyr Gibbs, who people still feel pretty highly about, especially if Brandon Ayuk is on a team that's deep at wide receiver. Or a running back coming back from suspension like Alvin Kamara, who people still believe is going to be an elite running back, but probably won't. And then again, maybe with all the Raheem Mostert hype and what he's doing, you can get Brandon Ayuk for Raheem Mostert right now. It's worth a try. Another wide receiver that's been disappointing after a huge week 1 is Calvin Ridley, but look, he still ranks 14th in targets and 4th in red zone targets. Opportunity is still there for Calvin Ridley, and you got to think Trevor Lawrence and this offense is going to get better. This is a great buy low opportunity for Calvin Ridley. If you're okay at running back, I think right now you could trade Aaron Jones for Calvin Ridley, and that would get it done. And again, you could trade Alvin Kamara coming off a suspension, who wasn't very good last year, and package him with a wide receiver like Jerry Jeudy, who looks like he may eventually be the #3 on this team. Hasn't been very good, but still has some name value. Or you could package a guy like DK Metcalf to replace Calvin Ridley, and then throw in a guy like Dameon Pierce, who did score a touchdown this week to kind of show some value, but I really don't think has much long-term value. Now, a wide receiver who's been good all 3 weeks, but I feel like isn't getting a lot of hype is Michael Pittman. He has the 6th most targets in the NFL and a 73% catch rate. And he's been good with Anthony Richardson or Gardner Minshew. And it looks like Anthony Richardson probably will be back in week 4. And if you're deep at running back and you need help at wide receiver, I think a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs could definitely get you Michael Pittman. I also think packaging a tight end like George Kittle to a team who really needs a tight end and throwing in a running back like Javonte Williams could definitely get Michael Pittman. And then once again, I'm going to say now is the time to trade Alvin Kamara. If you can get Michael Pittman for Alvin Kamara, especially in PPR leagues, you got to do it. Now let's go to a couple rookies who have shown flashes, but also have not been very consistent because, hey, they're rookies. And let's start with Jordan Addison. Didn't boom in week 3 like I thought, but there's reasons to be encouraged because he has seen his route participation go up each of the first 3 weeks. And his route participation in week 3 was 80%, and it's only going to go up and up from here. You still have an opportunity to buy him low, and if you're fairly deep at running back, I think a guy like Brian Robinson could get Jordan Addison. And I also think a guy like Javonte Williams could get Jordan Addison. There are people who still believe in Javonte Williams long-term this year. This is a great time to make this move. And then finally, I would try moving DJ Moore for Jordan Addison right now if you can. Again, DJ Moore has had a couple decent games the last 2 weeks. I know the Bears offense is scary, but he still has some value. And then the other rookie wide receiver I think you should be going after is Zay Flowers. He has 25 targets and an 84% catch rate through 3 games. The opportunity is here. He's got Lamar Jackson. Boom games are coming. Now is the time to go get him. And again, I'm going to say a running back like Javonte Williams, assuming somebody believes in Javonte long-term, should get you Zay Flowers. I also think Breece Hall could get you Zay Flowers. People still believe in Breece Hall long-term. They think he's going to be great at the end of the season. No need to worry about the risk of Breece Hall with the ACL. Just go get Flowers. And then again, if the team in your league that has Zay Flowers is desperate at tight end, I would happily trade George Kittle, get Zay Flowers, and just stream tight end. Now a couple of wide receivers who have actually been good so far, but don't seem to be getting any love. And let's start with Marquise Brown of the Cardinals. People were pretty much completely off this offense, but look, This whole team has looked way better than anybody, myself, expected. Marquise Brown has had a couple of nice games here, but people still are really doubting on Marquise Brown long term. He still is a tremendous buy low. They also don't realize that Kyler Murray is going to be back pretty soon, and the Cardinals obviously are not tanking. So again, I'm going to say if you can capitalize on a running back like Dameon Pierce, who just scored a touchdown, showed some signs of life, I would do it. I would also capitalize on the name value of Jerry Jeudy right now. People still believe that this guy is going to have a big year this year. This is the time to get rid of him. And then finally, if the team that has Marquise Brown is just desperate at tight end and still believes in Darren Waller, I think that might be enough to get it done. Another wide receiver that's been really good this year and people aren't really talking about is Jakobi Meyers. He was overshadowed by Davante Adams in week 3, but he has 22 targets in the 2 games he's played, and the Raiders are basically only throwing to him and Davante Adams, and because their defense is so bad, they're throwing a lot. Jakobi Meyers looks like an every week wide receiver 2. But you won't need to pay wide receiver 2 prices to get him. I'll bet again, if a team believes in the long-term health of Javonte Williams, that would do it. Also, if a player believes in the long-term health of Breece Hall, that would also do it. Then again, it's worth taking a shot with Dameon Pierce, who showed signs of life in week 3. Maybe people still believe. Now let's go to a running back that's not getting a lot of hype, even though he has looked great this year, and that is James Cook. The shocking thing for me about James Cook isn't that he's looked good, it's that he ranks 11th among all running backs in attempts. Not really what we thought we were going to get from this guy. He's averaging 6.1 yards per carry and also has 13 targets and 10 catches through 3 games, so he gives you plenty of value in both standard and PPR leagues. Yes, his lack of touchdowns will limit his ceiling, but this is a guy you can feel good about as an RB2 every single week. And again, I'm going to say, if you can capitalize on DJ Moore having a couple of decent fantasy games and get a running back like James Cook, do it. And if you could package a wide receiver like George Pickens and a running back like Zach Moss, who's been really good but may lose his job next week, you got to do that too. And once again, I'm going to say, if the player that has James Cook doesn't have a tight end and is desperate, see if you can get him for George Kittle. Let's stick with the extremely undervalued players who are actually performing right now and go with Courtland Sutton out there in Denver. He looks like the clear #1 wide receiver here, getting red zone targets, scoring touchdowns, and this Broncos defense somehow has become one of the worst, forcing them to throw the ball a lot. I think if you could sell high on a running back like Zach Moss, who has had 2 big games and may lose his job next week, you do it. Also, if you can sell, I guess, semi-high on Jaylen Warren, who every week everybody thinks he's going to overtake Najee, and every week he doesn't, and he probably won't, this is the time to do it. And I still think people are very high on Kareem Hunt because Kareem Hunt got some touches, mainly in garbage time in week 3. He still has enough value, I think, to go get Courtland Sutton. And then I'm going to start talking about Zach Charbonnet, and you're probably going to hear his name on here week after week because he is starting to creep up on Kenneth Walker, and people don't realize it because Kenneth Walker is putting up huge fantasy games. He just had a 44% snap share in week 3 in a game that was competitive, not a blowout, and he's run almost as many routes as Kenneth Walker despite playing way less snaps. Not to mention, Zach Charbonnet is actually a good runner. He's averaging over 5 yards per carry. I think this is going to become a 1A, 1B before too long. So if you could trade him for another kind of handcuff running back like Jaylen Warren, who people are hyped up about for some reason, definitely do it. Also, Kareem Hunt, another handcuff running back that people are hyped up about. Go get Zach Charbonnet, he'll be better. And then if the team of Charbonnet needs a wide receiver, this is probably a good time to trade Tutu Atwell before Cooper Kupp comes back. So now you know who to trade for heading into week 4, but what about everything else? Your start sits, your booms, your waiver wire? We got you covered. Check out our week 4 playlist right here.